We got this email from Neil. Neil said, I'm a vegan and have been for over a decade. Despite that, my cardiologist still thinks my cholesterol is too high. No specific number here, but he said his cardiologist says it's too high. I'm 67 on a statin, moderate dose, and exercise regularly. What else can I do? Should I cut out nuts and avocados to reduce fat intake?
Yeah.
I like nuts and avocados. That doesn't sound like a good option to me, but I'm not his cardiologist.
This one is another one that can be a little more complicated in trying to give a direct answer.
Yeah.
But like we've alluded to in other videos, other podcast episodes, a lot of times with these nutritional interventions specifically, it boils down to what are you replacing? But what are we replacing? So if you are cutting out nuts and avocados just in and of themselves, you're trying to reduce calories, let's say, I mean, maybe that would work for him. I don't know. But if you're saying I'm going to cut out nuts and avocados, I'm going to eat, inevitably I'm going to be a little hungrier. And so something's going to fill those gaps.
Right.
Maybe it's a little more carbohydrates. Maybe it's a little more of
sugar,
something.
and that'd be worse.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little more sugar, something a little less desirable. So the key is always asking what are these trade-offs? What are these replacements? A more of a stock recommendation for people, I would say adding in nuts and avocados.
That's what I was going to say. That would be the opposite of what I'd recommend.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
But let's just say our guy Neil is eating 750 calories above maintenance or whatever. Let's just say that's in theory his issue. Then, reducing a little bit of fat intake as they are higher in calories per gram.
Mm-hmm.
That typically raises your LDL a little bit.
Yeah.
The good fats even do that too.
Yeah, so let's just say, right, it's a little more of a caloric issue, top-down approach. That would be an easy place to reduce some calories.
Sure.
But again, we don't know his whole sort of picture here. But as far as reducing cholesterol, I would say that, again, the nuts and avocados are examples of things that you would want to replace things like refined sugars and carbohydrates, replace things like certain red meats,
Right.
processed meats, processed foods.
Right.
Those are the things we want to replace with, whether that's avocado oils or olive oil or avocados themselves.
Flaxseed.
Almonds, flaxseed. I mean, there's a laundry list of things. Again, we want to figure out a way for Neil to kind of put those back in. I mean, because it sounds like he likes those. He's like, should I cut these out?
Well, I mean,
it's
if he's a vegan, he doesn't have a whole lot more beyond that. So
Right.
there's not, I mean, the meats, I had that thought when I saw that, but of course he's not eating meat or the dairy. So that's fascinating. But you're saying, so you're talking about reducing, because we've talked about cholesterol before.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about, if I remember right, adipose tissue directly influences LDL cholesterol levels. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, that's a huge component. And then also the types of dietary fats that you're consuming.
Okay.
Also your level of calories, all of that.
Right.
Plays a
So
role
if
as well.
he's overeating calorically speaking, you said beyond maintenance level, then it's entirely possible that just by pulling down caloric levels, he reduces those things and it pulls down that LDL-C.
Yeah. And I also don't want this to get lost in the sauce either, because this goes along, right along with what you're saying. The cut point, the stock recommendation that's out there as far as saturated fat goes, and this will fluctuate a little bit, depending on if somebody's keto or if they have different preferences or they're just maybe at a little bit less risk of, cardiovascular events for whatever reason.
Right.
We're aiming for, at least I'm aiming for, or making the recommendation to aim for less than 10% of your calories to come from saturated fat. And so that's hard because not all of us are sitting at home calculating calories.
Right.
But that's just it for me. That's not having red meat every single day.
Right.
For some people, that's not, maybe cutting it down from twice a day to once a day.
Right.
Or
make it be a treat a couple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all part of the macronutrients that we were talking about. You've heard of macronutrients, and so that's the protein, that's the carbs, and then basically the fat.
Yeah.
That this all encompasses all this. And I think, usually typically like somebody that's doing a keto diet, they have a higher fat, higher meat intake, and fish, chicken, and all that too, and less carbs.
Yep.
And I think really that's one of the best diets for diabetics because they don't need glucose or sugar to convert to cause inflammation,
right?
To raise their A1C and their glucose levels. So
it's a viable option. Again, we don't want to lose sight of somebody's preference. Either.
Sure,
that could easily be Neil's preference here as well
because it has to be sustainable over time.
It does.
Okay,
yeah, and
that makes sense.
And then also what you said kind of at the outset, we don't know what his cholesterol is. It would be. The more and more we learn about cholesterol, we're seeing that there's the, there's the influence of looking at the actual LDL particles,
right?
Looking at some number.
Yes, looking at something like ApoB.
Yep.
Which is going to be potentially a better indicator of what the cholesterol is looking like in your blood. There's Lp(a), which is something that, let's just say he's managed to do everything that he could from a dietary perspective, and he just still has this persistently high cholesterol marker. And it turns out that his Lp(a), which you have little control over, it's a
more genetic.
It's a genetic impact. And again, that's not necessarily LDL-C,
right? We don't know,
but there's the point is the whole cholesterol conversation is a big one, and having more details, and Joyce is the one, not me, working with patients directly. And these would be all part of the question, part of the screening process to make a better recommendation.
How high is high?
Yes. But those are some little tidbits for, I guess, Neil to research and ask more questions and, understand that cholesterol panel a little better. Try to just view this whole thing as, okay, again, what am I replacing this with? There's always going to be trade-offs. To think that you're just going to eliminate one thing from your diet and that's the end of it is generally kind of unlikely. There's going to be something just, by human nature that you're going to replace it with.
Yep.
So,
and he's vegan.
Giving him more questions.
The vegan, usually they don't want to do omega fish oil because it's marine derived fish, usually from some type of fish. And so that's when we use flaxseed or flax oil as that part of what he could introduce to just maybe to help raise his LDL and lower his HDL a little bit. So, and one thing
said that backwards, the other way around, right?
Yeah. So
raise
you want
HDL,
to
lower LDL.
Yeah, but you want to sometimes your LDL is some people is actually low and you want to raise it, but that doesn't happen as often. But correct.
Okay.
No, that's good. We don't want to.
I want to make sure we're saying everything. But no, okay, cool. Very cool.
And then the other thing is, most of the plaque and everything starts with foam cells and inflammation. So, the diet that he's doing is an anti-inflammatory diet by what he's saying, getting rid of nuts and, and avocados or whatever. That's more of an anti-inflammatory diet. So, we don't know a lot of the information here, but.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I feel bad. I know I jumped on the red meat thing. I somehow managed to gloss over the fact that he was a vegan. Again, more speaking hypothetically.
But it's true for, we're talking to everybody, not just Neil.
Right. And so in his case, again, not to, be too repetitive. It's in his case, it's theoretically watching more of than the the refined carbohydrates, the highly processed foods, which, become good options for vegans because you are a little more limited in some of your food selections. So thank you for making that, reminding me of that.
That's okay.
Good points.